Hello, everyone. Welcome to our workshop, Healing Racism Together. What is it like to live in my skin? I am Mari Fix McEwen, or Senada Brofus Koya Dentus, from the U Tree Clan, Ewing. This workshop is a 4-part series. 2 or more of the parts will be presented during World Unity Week and/or the 99 Days of Peace. And we actually might have another part in the 99 Days of Peace, but this is a continuation so we can build on the energy and take this somewhere together. And the exploratory series holds the intention of starting the process of healing racism together. Please trust this experiential process. There will be space for you to share your feelings and ideas in 1 or more of the 4 workshops in this series. So please make a note if anything comes up for you during our workshops, as you are an important part of the whole and the solution. Let us start by purifying and sanctifying the space and calling in our ancestors. When Sister Olarisha Chise Aje calls you to call in your ancestors and your mentors, which she will do during the ceremony, please actively call them into your physical space and into our circle. And now taking a second to just center ourselves. I now pass to Ava.
Creator, grandmothers, grandfathers, this is your granddaughter, Wamadi Tawia speaking. Welcoming all here from the 4 directions into the sacred circle. We cleanse and purify ourselves in a good way, with the clearing power of the cedar medicine and the gentleness of the sage. As the earth and fire join each other and transmute themselves, invite these healing medicines to completely wash over your body, mind, and spirit, bathing every thought, every word, and every deed brought into this sacred space and in beyond as we explore the deep topics at hand. Visualize the washing away and clearing of anything heavy and outmoded that you've carried with you, anything that you no longer wish to hold on to. Release it all, bless it all in a kind and gentle way. May you all feel lighter, brighter, and clear to communicate in this purified circle of intention and creation. All my relations. I pass to the center.
And now Cynthia.
I call in the direction of the east, Udher, August, air, the element of air. I call in the direction of the south, Jeshkart, August, Tochan, the element of fire. I call in the direction of the west, Yarkar, August, Ishke, the element of water. I call in the direction of the north, Twishkart, August, Dun, the element of earth. I call in the directions of the above and the below, Huas, August, Hish. And I call in the directions of the out, the within, and the through, Amach, Isti, August, Frij. And I pass to the center.
Chise.
We want to give praise to the owner of the day and the 4 directions. Olojoni mojubai bashe, wa room mojubai bashe, ila room mojubai bashe, ariwa mojubai bashe, kusu mojubai bashe, eshuo dara mojubai bashe. Mojuba Baban Lua, Mojuba Yan Lua, Mojuba Ti Kuri Shei Bai Bai Tong. Omi Tutu, Onatutu, Ile Tutu, Tutu La Roye, fresh water to freshen the road, to freshen the house, to freshen La Roye, the spirit that was present at the creation of man. Now we will give praises to our ancestors. When I say Mojuba, you will let us say, name your grandfathers. Mojuba. When I say Mojuba, let us name our grandmothers. Mojuba. When I say Mojuba, let us name all of our teachers who have gone before. Mojuba.
So many.
Margaret Aithling of Scotland.
When I say Mojuba, let us name our living mentor. Mojuba.
Grandmaster.
When I say Mojuba, let us name our Egbe, those of like mind who function with us in our mission in life. Mojuba.
Ancestors of the directions.
Ashe, Ashe, Ashe Sheo. We give praise and thanks for our Egbe, for our ancestors. Modupueo, Ashe Sheo. I pass to the center.
Toi doing al spirito hosent. Agasi hosent niart. Agasi niart tishkent. Agasi tishkent olus. Agasi olus solos and kiart. Agasin olus and kiart an grafwi. Agasin grafwi an grado na baher fad. Agasin grado na baher fad an grado ol spirit. Agus gach mahasan banished banin lesh. Grant, O Spirit, your protection. And in your protection, strength. And in your strength, understanding. And in your understanding, knowledge. And in your knowledge, the love of justice. And in the love of justice, the love of all existence. And in the love of all existence, the love of all good and goodness. Creator, let us listen deeply with our hearts so that we may open the door to healing both within ourselves and between our brothers and sisters. Knowing that even if our discussion here triggers wounds, defense, feeling misunderstood, or pain, that what is arising is a signal that Spirit is calling these things up for reevaluation. Let us look deep into the mirror of what our brothers and sisters experience in compassion and understanding, seeing in it the reflection of our own hurt, pain, needs, wants, and aspirations. If we will look boldly at the shadow within us and in this outside world, we may find that it no longer holds any power over us and that we free ourselves to recreate a world of deep understanding, love, and partnership. A world that is aligned in all ways with the laws of love, sustainability, and interdependence. I call to the heart within us that knows no fear, that seeks to set things into harmony, that dares to walk and live by the path of greatness for the healing of earth and all her peoples. May we look to this heart and know that together we have the power. No matter what they may say or whether it doesn't look like we have it, we can step into this alignment with life and each other for the good of the whole. And may we have the courage to take that path and make it a reality. Please, everyone now, feel yourself expanding into the whole of life, connected completely as you are truly holding hands with each other of like heart and intention, forming a new way that is in alignment with love and life itself. I now place our individual and group prayers for love and healing into the fire as we begin. Bless these prayers, Creator. Duhas, all my relations. As you listen and participate in this workshop, stereotypes and generalizations may be referred to like white people do this or Black people do that. Know that these generalizations are markers of societal tendencies, that we are working with them to make some headroom into larger issues. Please hold an open stance while this happens, knowing that there is a greater goal that will be addressed as we have our eye on the big picture here. If you are triggered or offended, as some of the material may be disturbing, I invite you to notice what the need you have may be that has triggered the feeling. As an example, if you feel that you're being indirectly accused of something, you might find that you have a need for fairness or to be seen for who you are. Make a note of this. Likewise, if you hear something that triggers you in what your brothers or sisters share, I invite you to look at the heart of what they are expressing and why. What are they needing by saying what they have said? Is it compassion, consideration, understanding, fairness, to be seen, safety for their children? There will be an opportunity for you to share later and in future workshops so you can express and explore as we work out these feelings and insights together. If by chance you find yourself feeling extremely triggered or overwhelmed, be sure to take care of yourself. Only you know what you need. If there is a need for support, we will later place a document from our licensed counseling team in the chat with some resources for you to access. So just click on it. The reason I know that I needed to create this workshop in the first place was because a good friend of mine is hurting. Seeing her people, family, colleagues, and children terrorized by police, hate groups, marginalized, targeted in this country, both by media and in the real life situations, makes her feel both unsafe and unwanted. Did you know that most Black people won't talk openly to white people about anything? Except maybe superficial things, because they think we don't want to listen. They think that we feel that they are exaggerating in their situation, and that we believe that they actually have the same advantages as we do. When many of us cry all lives matter in a response to Black Lives Matter or Indigenous lives, that we don't really want to learn history nor really want to have equality or change. They question whether we put time into knowing the true history or their history, as they've had to learn ours in our schools. This also includes Native history. Do you have a real deep relationship with a Black or Native person? Hopefully both. Where they can bar their soul to you and say the good, bad, and the ugly in love. Have you nurtured that trust? Imagine seeing on a daily and weekly basis my friends' people disproportionately jailed for lesser crimes when big money crimes on Wall Street and the elite get away with embezzlement of millions and murder. Imagine seeing your mother's house appraised for a whole lot less because you were Black and she lives in a great neighborhood. Why are Black neighborhoods appraised for less anyway, if they're in similar condition? Imagine having your child's school receive a whole lot less funding. Imagine your child not given the ability to learn their history because the school district wants to allow some children to remain innocent, while your child is not allowed to remain innocent. Imagine covering that history up at school like it never happened, or not having your part of the story told, marginalizing it so only one group can keep pretending or minimizing. Imagine not being able to wear your hair naturally in school. Imagine hearing any good Indian is a dead Indian. Imagine being terrified to be pulled over by the police, as you may be shot for just being Black. And when the celebrity you know has to go to the police station in Malibu to announce that he owns a Ferrari so he doesn't get pulled over for stealing his own car. Imagine being termed as lazy, unable to govern yourself, subhuman, primitive, hunted down like animals and whipped unmercilessly, taken away from your land, not allowed to speak your language. I just couldn't let this continue because it's not over here. I couldn't look her in the eyes and just let what's going on in this world keep going. This business as usual. Because I know that if I don't take action, I am complicit on some level. And I know that the hurt of one is the hurt of all. We are all intrinsically linked. We're all responsible for each other. We can't just let each other sink into the pit thinking, oh, well, it wasn't me, and go about our daily business. Honestly, that is not love. Something dies inside when we look away. Something shuts down. And I want to live. Yes, it's a lot with the structure of society keeping us on the hamster wheel, exhausted. But I came here instead to live the life we dreamed possible. I came to live all out and protect and love to my very core. So here we are. You may not agree with what I am saying completely, but I'm sure you agree with some of it. What are we going to do about all of this? Let's explore, let's cry, let's get real with each other. So real that we take the veil off our eyes and hearts and are able to see our love in each other's faces. Let's cultivate the deepest relationships where we can truly hear each other and meet all needs. Where we heal each other from all the shame, the pain, and dysfunction, even back through our forefathers. No one left behind, not even the earth and her creatures. Let's go for it. Let's play all out. I now pass to Elder Akumbwa to set the tone of our deep dive into history. Please introduce yourself, brother. I pass to you.
Thank you so much, Maury. Thank you for all those who open this space and hold us close, bring us close together. My name is Akumbwa Sauti, and I'm an initiated elder in the Dagara tradition from West Africa, from Burkina Faso. I was born here in the land of the Lenape on Turtle Island, but I am here to speak to you about Africa. I want to first say that for African people, history is personal. It is us. Our ancestors come to us from our history. They are alive with us. They are with us now. That's why we call them in. That's why we say their names. That's why it's important for us to have a relationship with them. And as I begin to speak, I also acknowledge the Massachusetts people, the Wampanoag, the Nipmuc and Pequot peoples of the lands where my feet are right now, and their struggles for land back and decolonization. And as I mentioned, the Lenape, I also mentioned the Cayuga. These are peoples whose lands I have lived on, and there are others, of course, too. But as I open this up, I need to talk about, or just mention, Cheikh Anta Diop, one of our greatest African historians and thinkers who penned a book called The Cultural Unity of Africa. I find this is important because though there is so much diversity on the continent of Africa and the diaspora of Africa, Cheikh Anta Diop started to see and helped us see the cultural unity of Africa. There's so many things that from what we now call Cape Town to Cairo, across the continent of Africa, that there are similarities between the people of Africa, between the cultures. There are definitely some things that help us understand that there's an African personality, that Mother Earth has brought forth upon her body, upon her bosom, a powerful, beautiful, intelligent, integrative cultural milieu, a mixture of people and spiritual understandings that is powerful, that is multidimensional. So it's really important that though we say, yeah, we know at this time that Africa is a multitude of countries and languages, over 1,000 languages, that even with that in mind, that there is a cultural unity that we can point to. Also, we have to understand that Africa is an indigenous continent, and that has been our history. That's the history of humanity, that we've all been indigenous to the parts of the world in which our people have spent most times, and our ancestors have lived and died there. But some of the things that we hold dear and that we have created within that are concepts of reciprocity. All of the people who are representing indigenous cultures understand completely what reciprocity is. It's one of the things that's missing from modern society. We have these concepts of informed intimacy, and we might even call them science at this time. But the great tendency and history that Africans have had on the continent have brought us into a deep understanding of what the elements are, and now in English we might call them physics and chemistry. We had that knowledge. We had that knowledge of what our world was about. We had a real integrative understanding of these things. There was and is conceptions of sacredness and inviolability to not only to the world around us, but to each other, to our own bodies, to our own senses, our own multidimensional realities. Also, of course, there's an ancestral continuum, that we live within that we live within the life of those that have come before us, our embodied selves now, our spirits embodied on this earth plane, and our ability to move interdimensionally, of course. But as we go back into the ancestral realm, that we live inside this continuum, this circularity of life. We have concepts of shared abundance that maybe more popularly can be understood in the concept of Ubuntu from Southern Africa, where we have a deep sense of interconnectedness with each other that is so important. And I like to liken it to a forest, where all the trees are working together and informing themselves of each other's lives and supporting each other. This is part of the spirit of Africa, that we have this these conceptions of communalism, of functional symbolism, which I would like to talk a little bit more about at another time, but our natural spiritual dynamics about how we are deeply connected to nature, how we have been deeply connected to spirit. And that's why I call it natural spiritual dynamics. Again, we have had a highly developed integrative cultures and interconnectedness to the land, nature, waters, and spirits. Now, within that, we have developed amazing and powerful kingdoms, governments, nations, in particular ones called Kemet, which is ancient Egypt, Mali, Songhai, Manamatapa, and Ghana. Amazing and powerful kingdoms and nations. And I want to point out also within that, again, we have cultures like the Dogon, who were able to thousands of years ago connect to and map out where the star Sirius was. Not only that in the outer world, but look into our realities in the inner world. Again, the multidimensional ability to see things and to experience things and to move within the dimensions of life. We were never just looking at, okay, there's the life that we live here on the surface and maybe death or something else. There's multiple dimensions of life that we have been able to see, which helps us create our strength. In that, I just want to say that in a way we had no art, that everything was integrative. We didn't have art that we'd put on a shelf or put somewhere. Everything that we created, including our music, and more people understand our musical contributions to the world than all the other governmental, scientific, and many other contributions to the world. But all of these things were integrated into our cultures, integrated in spiritual context. And in closing, because we cannot begin to, put a large or profound or deep context into what African history really is. So I'm only able to touch on a few things, but one of the things really important here is that indigenous Africa and clearly the indigenous world itself is the longest running of multi-dimensional, intergenerational, peer-reviewed cultural practice and knowing. In the modern world, we look at peer review in the academic sense, and we might be looking at, say, 10 to 20, maybe 50 people who look at what we're doing and look at the power of that, and if it's right or correct, or if it makes sense, of tried and true and improved cultural understandings, improved cultural and scientific and spiritual understandings that bring us to a place of even deeper interconnectedness with spirit, with ourselves, with the cultures that we create, and what that looks like, what that feels like, the level of validation we come to as African people, coming from a land where all these things have been real. And upon this, we need to understand how rooted in time, in space, African people have always been, and what the power of that is. And again, the longest running process is this indigenous process, and for which many of us understand or acknowledge that Africa is the home of humanity. Now, there are other creation stories around the world, of course, and we have to take those into consideration. But we also have to understand the deep, deep human gift that Africa is to humanity, and Africa is to the future. And thank you for this moment, Mari, for being able to give voice to that. And again, I acknowledge that there was so much more, but thank you for that moment.
Thank you. That is really very similar for Native peoples. They've been caretaking this land for so long, and look at what's happened in the last few hundred years when this kind of predatory grab it and take it energy came in. And we're going to be going through that too, and how that affects us both on a cellular level, energetically, mentally, and emotionally, and what has kind of transpired in our subconscious that kind of goes along with this energy that seems to feel entitled to not treat everything for the good of the whole, and to take and to see something as other and then have its way with it, rather than as a relationship, as something that's integral in the whole weave and web of life. And now I have two stories coming up. Our first speaker, and I'm hoping she's connected to be able to speak. Her name is Red Feather Woman. She will be speaking. And as you listen to each of these stories, I would like you to consider the heart and the mindset of the culture that the stories came from. And do the cultures that you're listening to engender unity or justify tyranny? Do they say there is a chosen people above another? Do they say that they're basically what I'm looking for you to look at also is, do those people favor one race over another? And perhaps, though, these stories were taken out of context and reinterpreted. So if that's the case, do we want to go along with these interpretations, or do we want to redefine them and see them differently? So the first person that will be speaking is Elder Red Feather Woman. And could you please come and introduce yourself? And I pass to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, my name is Rose Red Elk. I'm also known as Waika Luta Winya. I am Red Feather Woman. I am from the proud nation of the Lakota Nakota people from Fort Peck Reservation in the northeastern region of Montana. I am a traditional storyteller, singer, songwriter, author, and do lots of wonderful things. My primary goal is to help humanity, help our people, help all people, because this is what has been taught throughout the generations. Miwa Takuyasan, we are our relation. Everything has a spirit, and everything, what you do to one thing, what you do to one nation, what you do to one person affects all people. So one of the things, my story today is on the Keepers, it's from my Keepers of the Earth album. I have 4 of them out, but right now I want to share this incredible story that I have taken around the world, all throughout the nations, and it's for all people. It's the story of the medicine wheel and the 4 colors and what they represent. This is a Plains story, so that means that primarily I'm a Plains native, indigenous. So this is a story from the Plains, but it also encompasses other stories throughout different nations that have the same meaning. It's very powerful, and the first time I ever heard it was, oh gosh, throughout my life I've heard of the medicine colors, and I didn't quite know what they meant until an elder and from White Bison Society actually shared this with me, and then it all started coming together. I brought my wheel. These are the medicine colors. There are 4: Black man, red man, yellow man, and white man. Long ago, before the Europeans come to this nation, to this Turtle Island, as we call her, long before, Creator told the elders and the medicine people that there were 4 races in the world, that they could travel, and they did. The medicine people, modern day, we call that astral projection, leaving the body and going across the world. The ancient ones knew how to do this, the medicine people, and they could see other nations throughout the world that were not here on Turtle Island at that time. Creator told them that each one of these nations has a gift. If they do not abuse it, it will help their nation and the world. The white man, keepers of the fire. They are the ones that have developed the things of boom, bang, things that can destroy, things that hurt, things that maim. But fire is a healing element. It purifies, it cleanses. Much, much good comes from fire. White man, keepers of the fire. The black man, keepers of the water. It is not what I was told at this time, that in the 19th century, I believe, there was an African-American scientist. Some of you may know of him. I forget his name, But he was actually the one, an African-American doctor who just started developing the science and plasma, the blood of the body, the fluid of the body. It is revealed in the 21st century more, it is prophesied in the 21st century more will be revealed about keepers of the water. We cannot live without water. It runs through our veins. It gives us nourishment. We have to have this. Black man, keepers of the water. The yellow man in the Far East, keepers of the air. They are the ones that have given us the yoga and meditation and understanding breath, how important it is that breath, because it gives us life. And without it, we cannot live. The yellow man, keepers of the air. The red man, North, South, Central America, and other parts of the world are keepers of the earth. We understood that mother means giver of life. She gives us everything that we have. She always has. And our ancestors understood that in the mornings we would, when the sun rises, we would give her thanks for what she would give us that day. At the end of the day, we would give thanks for what she did give us. She gives us the food that we eat, the water we drink, the air that we breathe, everything. She gives us diamonds for our pleasure, gold, turquoise. Even our energy now comes from earth, everything. And she's out of balance. And as she's out of balance, we are out of balance. We have forgotten to honor her. All living things have a spirit, and Mother Earth is a living spirit. Our nations, all of these colors, the red man, keeper of the earth, the black man, keeper of the water, the white man, keeper of the fire, and the yellow man, keeper of the air. All of these nations and their indigenous people have medicine people and stories that teach how important all of us are as human spirits, how everything is connected. Now, when I first started telling these stories when I was a long time ago, and long before I even really understood the medicine colors, and I've taken for 23 years after I left corporate America to pursue the arts, I have seen changes of great magnitude. But there was one time when there was so much prejudice, even within our own nation, about marrying outside. We're no longer marrying full bloods. Our blood quantums have depleted and depleted. Does that make us less? No. Each now in this 21st century, we're intermarrying, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the beauty of this that I see and I share now is that each one of these nations that lives within your DNA, your genealogy, you have those gifts. I have red, yellow, and white. My grandson has black, yellow, red, and white in his DNA. And how beautiful that is, that each one, that he has all of these gifts within his human DNA. We all have gifts and something to share. Notice the circle. The circle, as we began today, encompasses, we believe that all people have a place within this circle. There is hope for our nations. There is hope for our Mother Earth as we come together to raise a consciousness. It doesn't take many lights in the darkness, many people gathering together that are light workers to make this difference and make this shift, because this is where we are now in the 21st century. Much major change coming. But I like to think that with all the bad that's happening, we must heal and let go of the past in order before we can heal the future and within our own selves. As is balanced with all this negativity on this side here on the positive, we have to balance this. And there is so much more good and miracles happening this very moment of good. Let us all remember that we are human spirits first. We are all connected to one another. And that with love, with especially gratitude for who you are and what you represent and how you can change the world. And I say these things in the name of the four directions and the creator. Miwa Takuyasen, we are all relations. I am honored to be here. I wish all the fathers that are honored in their own families for a happy day, as the United States has Happy Father's Day. And again, I am Waika Luta Winya. I am called Red Feather Woman from Fort Peck Reservation of a Lakota and Nakota descent. Pila Maya. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. So that's one cultural come from on how the world is looked at. So if you reflect to that cultural come from, what kind of world does that allow us to create if we are harmonizing with that mythology within? Now, it's not as easy as just making up your mind, but it's also extracting these subconscious patterns and energetic patterns from our forefathers and from within our bodies. So later we will get into all of that. So the next storyteller is Cynthia Cunningham. And Cynthia will be speaking on another mythology that has been interpreted in a certain way, which may be able to be reinterpreted, but we will let her speak about this mythology right now. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Grandmother Mari. So hello, my name is Cynthia Cunningham. I'm a member of the Ancestors of the Four Directions. I'm a ceremonialist and storyteller of Celtic, Slavic, and Finno-Ugric descent, and I'm currently living in the ancestral lands of the Tohono O'odham and Pasquayaqui people in Tucson, Arizona. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker serving as a counselor in my local community. And I'm here today as part of my commitment to this collective work of racial healing and creating peace on earth. And I'm here to talk about a story from Judeo-Christian mythology and how it shaped America's thinking about race and how it was used to justify slavery. This is the story of the curse of Ham. Now, Ham was one of the sons of Noah. And this story was even quoted in proceedings on the floor of the Senate in defense of slavery and later used to defend racial segregation in America. Genesis 9:18 to 29 tells the story of Noah and his three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, after the floodwaters recede and they leave the ark. Noah plants a vineyard, gets drunk on his wine, and passes out in his tent. His son Ham walks into his tent and sees his father naked and runs out to tell his brothers, Shem and Japheth. Now, Shem and Japheth walk into his tent backwards, averting their eyes, and drop a cloth over Noah. And Noah comes to and is ashamed and feels some gratitude for being covered by two of his sons. He then blesses Shem and Japheth, but curses Ham's son Canaan. Quote, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants, shall he be unto his brethren. Blessed by the Lord, my God be Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God make space for Japheth, and let him live in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." Now, Noah's three sons were believed to have populated the earth, and many later theorized that these sons could be representational of the different races of man. And the name Ham in Hebrew, while it had multiple meanings, including blackened, burnt, angry, or a protective fortress, But the interpreters selectively chose one of the definitions and portrayed Ham and his son Canaan as Black. And despite nothing in the Bible identifying them as such, and therefore they assigned them as the progenitors of the Black race and used this tale to support slavery. This Noah's curse was used as justification during the antebellum period for American slavery, saying it was God's decree that the Black people were destined to be in slavery for perpetuity, and that the white race represented by Japheth were superior, and they were supposedly blessed by God. Interpreters even went so far as to say perhaps Ham raped his father or raped his mother or had sex with a dog and a raven on the ark. And this is why he was cursed, even though none of this was stated in the Bible. Ham did violate the no contact rule between humans and animals during the harrowing journey on the ark, and did have contact with a dog and a raven. But I think it's far more likely that they sought companionship and comfort during that terrifying journey. I know my dog would seek out people during a severe thunderstorm for comfort and protection. But somehow a curse made by a hungover man who was ashamed of the body that God gave him was taken as gospel, as a divine decree. Let this be a lesson to listen critically to the stories of people who twist spiritual texts in order to perpetuate hate instead of love. And I pass to the center.
Thank you, Cynthia. So what mythologies do we hold that affect our lives? There are so many belief systems that we hold up as mythologies. And are these stories subconsciously lodged in our bodies and reactions? And even if we have parents or grandparents or great-grandparents that have that story, those stories can be within us at some level. Our next speaker, as a survivor of colonial religious native boarding schools, our next presenter, esteemed elder, Auntie Molly. Please share with us the atrocities your people have endured and what has it been like to live in your skin, or whatever you would like to speak on, as Spirit will let you know, I'm sure.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you for having my name right. It's Malihatkwa. It means oldest living relation. And I've carried this name for more than half of my life because my mother passed away. And I was made a young matriarch. I'd like to open with a prayer for my people in the Stotland Nation. Ka'akukpi, Kukstamuta, Spa'ats and Kelk, Kukstamko, Tapalamuta Squate, Amhastimiqua, and Hunksa. What a life it has been. I came into the world the most beloved of children simply because I was born. In my nation and the Great Stotland Nation in British Columbia, Canada, every child was revered, every child was cherished. Every child was watched over very carefully for the first 2 years of their lives while they were still around their own fire and hearth. And all the time, the aunties and the grannies and all interested folk within their view kept an eye on the child to see what interested them the most. And from that time, it was taken that if a child was very interested in
what Granny was doing, making her basketry and any of her other skills. That child was directed through a relative later on, at the age of reasoning, to be probably 6, to was encouraged to do that. And in my case, it was evident from the very earliest stages of my life that I wanted to be a helper. Whenever there was a gathering, I was able to, I couldn't pack the dishes for a meal or a feast, but I was given the cutlery to pack around and anything that wasn't breakable. So from that time, my grandfather took it upon himself to begin training of me in the ancient ways of our people. So for 7 uninterrupted years, my life was magical. And I thank our Creator for the opportunity that it gave me to hang on to the cherished beliefs that I was born with. And the time before contact, I would have had an uninterrupted journey of teaching, of learning, gathering knowledge and skills that would have borne me through life. I would have been initiated, starting very early in life, and carried through from one initiation to another as time went on, including the rite of passage. And mine happened when I was 14 years of age. In that, my grandmother had passed away. I was 14 years old in 1954. My grandfather said, "I'm sorry that I didn't give you your name and your status while we were all gathered together." However, he said to me, he asked me some challenging questions, which were quite profound for a 14-year-old. But I answered him correctly, without reservation, without fear. And he told me then that my life was of service to the people. And because so much had been given to me by this great gift of receiving my grandmother's name, Stinsa, a hereditary name, that much would be expected me of in my lifetime. So I accepted all of it. And my grandfather told me then, he was 94 years old, he said, "When I'm finished talking today," he said, "I'm getting ready to go to Mama. I miss her." So within a few months, in December, he left us. And life as I knew it then, my childhood, I will tell you, because what's it like to live in my skin? Well, I'm telling you about the beautiful parts of my life, because my childhood ended at age 7 when I was sent to a concentration camp in Canada called a residential school. All childhood ended that day. The most frightful sight that I saw when I was brought up on a cattle truck. It was about a 50-mile journey up over our mountains and all. And when we got onto the ground of the residential school, we were met by these persons wearing black from head to foot. They had white around their faces and a big gold cross, and it scared the heck out of me, because I'd never seen anything like that. And so as soon as we got there, she started with instructions right away. Line up, everybody, line up 2 by 2 and march over to the girls' dormitory and the recreation hall. Then we were given assigned a helper, which would be an older girl. And we were stripped of our clothing. We were given these hideous uniforms to put on. They were all scratchy and miserable. And the next thing I remember, we were led into the showers that were steaming hot. And I thought for sure that they meant to cook me alive, because I'd never, ever had a hot shower or bath because my choice had always been every morning to run into the creek where I grew up. And so I was used to cold glacier water from the sacred mountains in our territory. And so it was a real shock to me, and I just about screamed the house down because I thought they were going to cook me alive. So I was assigned for the next 5 years to the center shower head, which only ran cold water. So that happened all the time that I was in the school. And the one thing that I know for sure is that if the nuns picked on you the first day when you got there, they stayed on you. They never gave up, because those were the shy children, the children who came from small villages that didn't know English, which was the greatest crime of all. And so the punishment started, and it was severe. It was so to the point where I know that children were informing on other children, and it was painful to be in that situation where nothing you said meant anything. And they tried to scrub the color out of my skin. I remember when we had that shower, and yes, we washed our hair. They used DDT. You can imagine putting that on a child's scalp. And then once we were changed, we got our hair cut. Well, I had long, beautiful braids. My mother and my aunties and my grandmother brushed my hair out every night and let it loose. And the next thing I know, my hair is cut off in any which manner up to my ears. It was, I think, one of the most humiliating moments of my life. And when I looked at all my cousins and sisters and see what they were going through, that it still haunts me today. It still haunts me. And that was just the beginning. The insult, what could be worse than a child being removed from his parents, like we were just so much cattle or something? Not even. When I think of that, it makes me angry. It makes me hurt for all of those who didn't get to come home. I was blessed and with the love of my family that they were able to come and visit every couple of months and to make sure that we're okay. And one of the things about the residential school that I went to here in Canada was that they had a scientific program, and it had to do with food. How little nourishment could they give us and keep us going? Well, we had 5 years, I had 5 years of deprivation of food, for one thing, along with everybody else. I wouldn't have survived to my 82 years if it hadn't been for cod liver oil. And my poor sister didn't like it, so I would have her share every day that we were given it. So the food to begin with every day, and of course it was Catholic school, so we had to observe all the Lent and all of that, and we went without any beef nourishment and vegetables and all of that throughout that 40 days, if you can imagine. You got an orange once a month. And we grew up on a dairy farm, the first Frisian farm in Canada from Holland. So the experiment that they were doing was how they could starve us and still keep us alive. And the punishments that went with the slightest infraction, your thoughts weren't your own. And your feeling of loneliness, no one ever responded. No one ever comforted a child in that place. You live without that comfort, it affects you. It hurts something so deep inside. And the things that went on after the lights went out, it took COVID for me to have my first flashback. And as soon as I realized what it was, I shut it off. It came the second night I was in the hospital. It came again. And I said, oh, no, you don't. I said, I worked hard to bless my life with goodness. I don't have to look at your evil to know that you are evil. And I remember saying that as a child. I don't have to look at the face of evil to know that it exists, because surely it does. We bore witness to it, and we bear the marks on our bodies and our souls and our spirits. And lots of us never made it home. Those are the ones that I am sorrowful for, because I know that before I came here on this earth, I was given instructions that I was to be part of the change that would bring the story out. And here we are, Canada. We're still here. And I'm staying here until they find all the babies in those graveyards and proper ceremony is done. I'm sick of these mealy-mouthed leaders. You go back all the way back to what they call the doctrine of discovery. Ignore it. It means nothing. The Indian Act. Yeah, that's what it is. They act like they care, but they want to keep their hands on the reins of power. So until we get rid of those two things, we're stuck with the things the way they are. We need to change that. I'm furious that we have that person coming from Rome to touch our homeland. And that other one sent a representative here to our country here not too long, but just a few weeks ago. We can do without them. We don't need them. Right now, until things change at that kind of level, we are needing to gather all of our forces together and be true to who we are and fight for what we know is right. Because we welcome the world, but the world just came and took and took and took. Well, not anymore, world. We're on to you. And we're going to win this. And we're going to see you out of power. That's what I live for. And I feel that with each and every one of you. And I hold you and the connection we have together. It is so wonderful to feel the connection from around the world. To know that we have the same purpose in mind. That's for the betterment of the future generations. I'm a caretaker, a wisdom keeper. I'm a healer, an author also. And I love every moment that Creator is giving me to live this life, because I never did believe the fairy tales that were going on from the Catholic Church. and I still don't, because there was no message of love or caring in any of things that we were taught that they tried to instill in us. And I thank my ancestors, the spirits of all my ancestors, my grandfather, Kashusha, my grandmother, Kwatstinza, my mommy, Ayamatqua, and my daddy, Ghost Walker. And I thank all of them for the gift of life and the will to live it to the best of my ability. It wasn't always easy, but as soon as I put my foot on the path that was meant for me, I saw it before I was born. I knew what I was coming into. I tried to get out of it. Crater stepped down, put his hand on my shoulder on the red road. He said, "But my child, you knew it was going to be difficult, but you agreed to this." So I looked up, and I looked at the rock that was beside me on the trail. That was my challenge. So I obediently went back and came through the river of life. And I started to fight right from that moment. I had 14 steps, white marble with messages on each and every one of them, till I got to the top. And at the top it was a barbed wire fence. And I had to go through that fence in order to find paradise. Paradise has nothing to do with any organized religion, because it was beautiful emerald green grass blowing gently, welcoming me into that place of learning. And so I heard my grandfather's voice, because he directed me on how to travel and how to return safely before he left me when I was 14 years old. But he and my ancestors are with me every single day, as I know that they are with you, because they're the ones who are our guideposts. And they're the ones who help us when times are difficult and we want to stop. No, there's no such thing. We have work to do, and I pray that I have the time to do it. I thank you with all my heart for listening to this. I wrote a whole book about it, and I got a second book too. I wrote a whole book, if you can believe it, from the time of 1858, which is when the gold miners came from California, and they were going to kill everybody, all the Indians in sight. Well, my ancestors went down across the border and made an alliance, and we stopped that. But from the moment that happened, my history, of course, it changed. But I will say this, my grandparents were born free. It was before Confederation and before British Columbia was born. So I say, with all happiness and joy in my heart, thank you very much. As we say in my language, Takam Snuknuka, we are all connected. All my relations.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Auntie. That was really moving and powerful and touched my heart. So I'm sure it touched others. Who would like to go, Ukumba or Chise?
I can, but I'd like to check with Chise if you would like to speak at this time.
I can go after you, brother.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay, thank you, Chise.
Mm.
Yeah, I want to thank our elder for just speaking just now and bringing into our framework and into our hearts the violence that has been meted out upon Indigenous people, that there are resonances for African people also. You know, I'm reminded of not only the mission schools that were set up by Christians on the continent of Africa, but that came from, and the violence that was meted out not only against our children, but against our adults, against our cultures. But I also want to acknowledge again something that our grandmother brought up around the doctrine of discovery and around the Roman Catholic papal bulls, which in and of themselves are what created the fantasy of not only of white supremacy, but also of the kind of religious power and entitlement and the cultural power and entitlement that was created out of that effort. And that, and I would say historically, all the Christian denominations were privileged by when, you know, those Roman Catholic priests and bishops and cardinals wrote this fantasy story that if the lands that they had not yet so-called discovered or found and plundered and exploited were not Christian lands, that they had every right to take those with force. And that's what they did. But it was basically a fantasy story that was backed up by force, by brute force, by military force, by guns and swords. At that time, again, this force created the opportunity for criminal Columbus, as I call him, to do the horrendous kinds of things that he did. Even at that time, though, we know that he came to what we now know as Turtle Island and some of the islands that are part of that, of North America. His brother had actually had contacts with Africa, and that they had knowledge of Africans traversing the Atlantic Ocean, so they knew that it was possible to get across that land. Even though they didn't know where they were going, they made a mistake, but they created nothing but horrendous violence and torture, infanticide, femicide in the lands of the Taino and Arawak. But into this violence, into this kind of conceptual violence of all other spiritual and cultural realities being lesser than or being non-existent, the dehumanization that came with this process, that was part of the concentration camp experience of Native people, of Indigenous people, of what we now call Canada and the United States. This dehumanization that also worked on Africa itself, that was part of destroying the inner self of Africans because of our connection to land, to spirit, to nature, to all of the elements. And that's why, yes, we can see some real important interconnections between Indigenous peoples around the world. But we cannot underestimate the power of what that was, those papal bulls, and that they are still in place. The doctrine of discovery is still in place. And it is still a guiding force in the United States settler colony as it continues its genocide against Indigenous people, which includes Indigenous peoples displaced, which I call African people, Black people on the continent of North America, and other places around the world. And actually, I also have to say that connection was part of what created the country of Haiti, that connection to Vodou. That was part of the Haitian resistance, the African resistance to European colonialism on that island, which also was part of where criminal Columbus landed. But we have to understand the deep abiding rupture of humanity that this process created, and we hear it in the voice of our grandmother. We hear it in the voices of all the other voices that come forward from underneath this oppression, this religious oppression, this cultural, political oppression that is part and parcel of not only the United States, but also of European colonialism around the world. Many times we look back to Europe and we say, oh, they're better than this, or Canada's better than this. This is not true. European colonialism is a globalized context within which these Christian mythologies and fantasies were embedded and are embedded to this day, to where I can be riding a public train and have one of my aunties literally attack me verbally because I'm carrying a book on Vodun, on African spirituality. I do not blame her. I blame our oppressor for creating that rift between her and I, and we're family. So we have to understand the real process of dehumanization that this has always been, and we hear it in the voice of our grandmother, and we hear it in the silenced voices of all those children that died at the concentration camps. We hear it in the voices of our ancestors who are at the bottom of the ocean, who died on purpose and by being pushed over because they were seen as less than human on their way through the Middle Passage to be enslaved in the islands and what we now know as the United States and beyond, and also South America, because that was a destination for kidnapped Africans also. But I hand this moment over to Chise, who I know has wisdom also in this area.
I'm so moved, and thank you, Mari. I am so moved by you, Aunt Molly. Thank you so much. And Ukumbwa, I could not have laid out the history better if I had worked for 10 weeks. Even though history has been something that I've done since I got here. I came into a family of elders. My youngest grandparent would be 113 now, and I had my grandparents until I was grown. This experience here, I think one of the salient things that people need to understand is that we are not all living in the same world. And I want to, because it is Father's Day, give deference to my father in telling my own boarding school story, which is rather different from Aunt Molly's. I went to one of the most prestigious boarding schools in this country. It is a sister school to the school that George Bush went to. So there were about 5 people of color. We won't go into all the details about how I ended up there, but my parents, post 60s, were looking for opportunities for their Black child. And opportunities were found. But because my father was who he was, an ex-Marine and a Black man who had survived the Depression by hunting and tracking, I went with a certain set of skills, and I went without any illusions about where I was going. And I had a friend ask me after the experience, would you send your own children? What would you say to someone, about sending your child to boarding school? Would you send your own? I said, I might, under certain conditions. And one of those conditions would be if said child had the fortitude and the wherewithal to stand up and back down a fully grown man, because that's what it takes when you send your children into these situations. When one of the things that they teach us in Ifa, and I say this because I am Olorisha Yansa, and Ifa initiated, my first initiation into Ifa, into Orisha was more than 25 years ago. On my grandfather's side, I'm hereditary Louisiana, old school hoodoo. And another thanks to one of my fathers who showed me the way. I will say this, they teach us that everything eats. And that can also be interpreted mathematically. What's done on one side of the equation happens on the other side of the equation. So I have a story about boarding school in that moving into that sphere, I am there less than a week. And at night in the dark on the quad, I get grabbed by someone. But because my father was who he was, you know, I was able, as a close friend of mine said, to apply privilege adjustment therapy. and it, in such a way that the perpetrator was on crutches for several months. And when I came home and told a friend of mine what had happened, she said, well, good, you know, that means that your training and the things that you were given are working for you. And when it's working for you, it's working for us. And it's interesting when I tell this story among women, a lot of the time people laugh, but I say, you know, it is amusing when a man bites a dog or when a child turns around and turns out not to be such an easy victim. But one of the things that I think gets overlooked in our laughter is the fact that we are in a society where any 15-year-old should have to be able to physically back up a grown man. We still live in a society where 15-year-old girls are called on to back up grown men. And this boarding school was over 30 years ago, and not much has changed. I'm here to accelerate the change that needs to happen. I'm speaking here to accelerate that change and to create a space in people's minds so that people will know that we are not, those of us who are darker than a paper bag, we come in many different forms, you know, not just female, but intersex and, you know, our sexuality, we may be gender fluid or what have you. A lot of these things are invisible, but predators, a predator is a special thing, someone who is exercising, especially if they are exercising power and privilege, either as a male or somebody who is, you know, of lighter skin tone or whatever or if you're in India, a different caste, whatever the disparity may be, predators learn to hunt. And a hunter looks at game, is looking for game, and looks at the land in a different way. And a predator who is a true predator is always looking for a victim. So it behooves those of us who are darker than a paper bag. So that's anybody who, not just Black people, but anybody, as I say, darker than a paper bag. It necessitates that we think differently because we live outside of the law. I knew when I got grabbed that the contract had been broken. Most societies, to function in any civilized fashion, there is a contract, spoken or unspoken. When that contract is broken, you must know what to do and how to handle yourself. Otherwise, it does not look good for you. So my parents sent a good and obedient child away to school. And I was a good and obedient child as long as all of the adults around me were good and honorable adults. woe be unto you if you break the contract with me. Because what happened that night was a breach of contract. And at that breach of contract, I stopped being a 15-year-old girl and I became a grown man. This is something that is not necessary if you are not of a darker hue in this country. It may be necessary if you are of a different caste in places like India or Mauritania or what have you. But what I'm saying this to say that children of color do not get the same childhoods or have truncated childhoods, because that's one of the features of oppression. And that has to be acknowledged. And the reason it has to be acknowledged is because most of us, find ourselves in schools, together since they integrated the school system. The issue is where my predator made a mistake is he thought I was a normal little girl. He didn't understand that I had been working with weights. In this situation, the weight was Blackness and femininity. So when I turned into something else on this person, he was in shock and I had the advantage of surprise and he didn't know what to do. That is not the same. And this is where it gets sticky, because I don't believe for 1 minute that I was the only little girl being grabbed. I was just the Blackest little girl being grabbed. And I didn't get grabbed again because I was Black and because I didn't have any illusions. There were girls around me that I knew were subject to the same kind of treatment, but because they were not coming from the same kind of experience. Some of them were white, or, there were a couple of other girls of color. But what I'm saying is they only had one thing to pull from. There was no way for them to defend themselves. There would have been, had racism not existed, a way for me to defend them. But there was no way I was going to tell. And the reason I was not going to tell is because I already knew who was going to be believed. And so it left me in a situation where I had to make sure that this person understood I wasn't to be touched again. And then I had to make sure that I was able to stay where I was. I would not have been able to stay had I told, because I would have been the problem. Because the Black person is always the problem, especially if the Black person is a child or a female, and I was both. So I was under no illusions. My poor little white friends, God bless them, they were not prepared for that predator. And some of them, I'm sure, had problems. This person went on to teach. Whenever I would see him alone in the hallway with a girl, I would, we have a phrase in the Black community, when you stare somebody down, you mad dog them. I would mad dog him. I'd mad dog him until he let the little girl go. I just stand at the end of the hall and just look at him until the little girl could go on. But I know I didn't catch him every time, But my parents sent me away. Cornel West tells a story about how his family sent him away when he was going to Harvard. I'm speaking of Professor Cornel West. They said, don't forget who you are. And my parents sent me away similarly. So I was like, well, this is how it is. We create our own things. We create, since everything eats, we create what's done on one side of the equation is done on the other side of the equation. at Christmas time, one of my little friends went home for Christmas and found that the house had been sold, and her family was gone. She had to come back to boarding school. The family had forgotten to tell the child that they had sold the house. They were skiing in Switzerland. So they sent a plane to pick her up, to take her to Switzerland. But as I got older, I remember thinking how interesting it is, because I had relatives who were also in boarding school in the United States, Indian boarding schools. That's another story. I said, it's interesting how on one side, you're stealing somebody's children, and the mindset that allows you to steal someone's children can allow you to forget your own. How do you move house and forget your child? And forget to tell your child? It's a broad contrast, but it speaks directly to the illness that has formed around the ideation that has been foundational to the formulation of the United States. The doctrine of discovery lent itself to the false legitimization of atrocities and depravity that has run a thread through everything. And what we are sitting here doing is akin to taking a porcupine quill and picking out those threads and undoing the knotwork of ugliness that has run through everything. This is why I'm so grateful for all of you for showing up, for speaking out, for bringing, I can feel the spirit, I can feel the love and the determination, and I'm going to pass this on to the next person, pass this on to you, Mari, and to the center. Thank you so much.
We have some deep stuff that's going on here. And as we go along, if anyone feels like they're extra triggered or having any problems, please look at the chat. We have resources from our counseling team in there. If you need any help, just click on the document. And we've posted some other links for you that we'd like you to have. One of which is to eventually, not right now, join our mailing list. And if you'd like to make a donation, and also, most importantly, we have some references so you can look at some of the videos that will give you more insight into the topic as we go to our next topic in the series, because this is going to be a series where we hear from our audience, and our audience, we're all working together. You're not going to become an audience. You're going to become partners in clearing this problem up. And we're going to have very deep discussions on this, on how to clear it up, how to hear all of us. Even if some things in our mind might be petty, we're going to listen to those, and then we're going to go through them. Because you are important. You are just as important as any of us to the solution on this planet. And together we can do it. We can work on this so we can see each other's hearts, and we can look in each other's eyes and reveal the truth and really speak from our deepest place. So just keep that in mind as we move through this. I would like to call on Grandmother Ia Tahira. Would you like to speak, Grandmother? Please introduce yourself. Oh, and by the way, you're on mute right now. Thank you. Yeah, you're still on mute. Can someone unmute Ia?
I kept saying you have to unmute me.
Well, it has happened now.
Well,
Thank you so much for being here.
Greetings to all of you. And somehow I had a resistance to coming here. And I know that I had a resistance. And the resistance had to do with the resounding of what has happened, and not the envision of how to dismantle what has happened. So anyway, that's where I'm going. So greetings again. I'm Iyatis here. I don't even know what part of this to speak from because I was born in Pocahontas, Mississippi on Chickasaw, Chickasaw land. I met those people there. I was 8 years of age. Nobody explained to me where they went or where they was going. I was also born in a time with a great-grandmother who was the first born out of slavery, with no lights, to women that had to carry water from the creeks and the ponds and the lakes to keep clothes washed, from a community that shielded me from the ugliness that was outside, that I would not know about until I left it. That's how protected that community was. But I watched and I saw and I envisioned, and I had a great-grandmother who gave me enough crumbs to walk with. I call them crumbs because there was no books. There was no books. There was only her small stories. Her stories about Timbuktu. Her stories about Great Hannibal. And I'm like, I don't know who the Great Moors, I don't know who this woman is talking about, but somebody had passed on something to her and she had enough to give me those threads, those crumbs that I walk with. And that would be what I would meet when I left that place in Pocahontas, Mississippi. With my first call to what it was to be in a white world was when I left my home to go to a high school. We all lived in the country, so they had Woodhouse schools, and the churches and the community basically was all Black, and they looked out for each other. The schools was all Black, everything is all Black. So when we left there and we went to transport to the high school, we on a yellow bus, so white children's on a white bus, on a yellow bus, and so we all go to the county school. And so we on our way back, and the young boys hanging out the bus said, "Nigga!" I'm like, what is that? So I go home and ask my great-grandmother, what nigga? My great-grandmother turns to me in this word. She said, remember, hate for hate don't get nothing but hate. Those people who are pissing that are hateful, but you remember that hate for hate don't get nothing but hate. Don't make no sense to nobody else, but somehow it set in my heart all the way through my life. Anytime I ran into those situations, what my great-grandmother had taught me, that foundation for remembering. And I didn't realize that she was really shaping me to be the woman that I have become in the world. For even being an elder today, that woman shaped me. Those small crumbs along the way shape who I am today. I would meet with that same context again when I get to New York. Was the first time I went to a big city. I realized that I really was a marginalized person. That's the word we have today. We didn't have that language during those times. But you knew that even though this was supposed to be a more liberated place, but you had a place. It wasn't said, it was noted in the stair. It was noted in the stair. And you knew somehow something was different. It was also the time of the civil rights movement. So that called me to walk into that part of the journey, to become part of that civil rights movement and to fight for liberation. And even there in that liberated piece, I still could see the two sides of the coin. Hate for hate don't get nothing but hate. But how do we interpret that? How do we transmute that to today? And one of the things that Aye said when she was talking that really hit home, that the original contract, the original agreement was broke when someone came to slavery, came to African land and stole the first Black person and brought him to America. That's a breaking of an agreement. That's a breaking of a contract. And perhaps it was broken even before that, but a contract was broken that threw all of us human species into the place that we are today. And so my question is, since we know that and we are the living voice of those ancestors, their ancestors are not dead, they are living in us today. We are the ancestors. We are their spirits. We are their stories. So we cry about what was a pain, but had they not walked through the pain, we would not be able to hear the voice today. They walked through the pain. They walked through it. My mother, who is on the other side, may she be blessed today, told me one time, until we can walk through a pain, we cannot become free, she says to me just before she died. She said, you must learn to go through it, not around it, not under it, walk through it. When we embody the pain, we can liberate ourselves. What am I saying? When we embody the pain, we also embody the wisdom that came out of the pain that leads us towards where we want to go today. I can sit here and talk about all the atrocities that has happened, but what have they taught me? What have they taught us? My father, who couldn't have a voice, and I had to go back and recalibrate that energy because I didn't like him, but to him to have a voice would have been fatal. He couldn't have a voice. When I can remember why, when I can remember why, when I can name it, I become the powerful transmuter of what has happened in this world. To me, that's who we are on this. When we can walk into our own darkness, our white bodies, our Black bodies, and say, what have we learned? Where is that trauma trapped inside of my body that prevents me from freeing myself and being holding a lantern for all of us to go forward? We all have work to do, not Black, all of us, white, brown, Black, because colonialism shaped us all, shaped our lenses, shaped the way we greet each other, shaped the way we walk in the world, shaped the fear that is trapped in my body, that makes me tighten up when I see a white policeman, shaped that fear. So those of us who are on these panels today, in the day of Juneteenth, may I remind you, Juneteenth. They didn't know they was free, but they didn't even know they wasn't free, but the word freedom meant something because of the vibration and the tone. It was another way to breathe in, take a breath, and hope and move forward. Because somewhere they knew, but they also knew that they had to hold on to something in order to pull themselves forward. So Aye could go to college, and all of those who came after with her, because that's another generation. They knew. Sometimes we look at it and say, look at the hardship, but somewhere they knew, because one, if you remember how they would say, they would sit and they would come to their church and they would pray. During the civil rights era, they would call their people together, say, I don't know what's on the horizon, but something's on the horizon. We need to come together and pray. We need to come together, community. So once you dismantle community, you can destroy people. And that's what we have witnessed. Even after the 60s, I say to people, we are worse off than we were before the 60s. And those of us who was in the radical lead of the movement, we was not calling for integration, but we was not the one who was called to the board. We was not the ones called to the board to make the decision. It was those who would agree with the ruling power that was called to the board We was calling for equal access. It's not the educational system that is equal access where we can maintain community and build community and educate our children. And it wasn't that we was blind and ignorant people. We knew what it was to be knowledgeable. We knew, we had taught ourselves with the hard books that we did receive. Just imagine if we had equal access. Not anybody give equal access. And even today, I think what we hear, we don't need more bills back. We need equal access to free oneself. And only we can do that today because we're not in a culture. We don't have systems that can do that. Those of us who can see on this panel that can hold these placentas or hold these containers, create new kinds of communities to hold this kind of discussion. What needs to transmute, not only in the world, but what needs to transmute here, where I can come my brother's keeper, where I can become truly my sister, where I can hold her while she walks through what she's walking through, without judging it. I didn't know what I was supposed to talk about, but this is what it seems that want to be said today. So I hope you guys can hear me. And like I said, it was a resistance because I can talk about the atrocities, but if I cannot talk about how to transmute to go forward in 2022, then I'm still replaying the same cycle. It says for 200 years, we have not gone anywhere in terms of our liberation process. Why? Because we stuck like in a wheel of trauma. And until we give voice to something and move that trauma out like the ocean, like the river, like what my father named me, River Lee, like the river when it pushes out from the bank and it starts to flow down. When we start to push ourselves away from our pain, away from our denial, away from our resistance, away from not seeing, away from not naming it, for fear I might feel some guilt. Let me feel the guilt. Oh shit, I am shamed. Oh God, I'm shamed with what my ancestors done. How can I heal that within myself? How can I'm grateful because I'm carrying you right here and I don't want to carry that. Right here now, the past belongs to here. The future belongs right in this present moment where we are today. Where we are today. We can play the history, but I invite us to retell the story, rewrite the history where it becomes what we envision today. Rewrite it. Transmute the pain that it becomes that medicine for healing. See the difference? So with that, that's my father, Frank, who's coming out. My grandpapa, Warren Allen, who was my father was a pathetic man who couldn't speak. He was afraid to. He was afraid to. Because a Black man probably wasn't supposed to be pathetic. He was crazy and locked away, or either a Black woman. She was messenger, shaman woman, medicine woman. She was locked away. She couldn't talk. That's the history I carry in my belly. The one that my ancestors asked me to walk through. As long as I can breathe, as long as I got breath, I will walk that walk. Thank you.
You have really spelled it out. That is why we're here. Thank you, grandmother. That's why we're here, to really see, not to hide from it, to really see it, to acknowledge it, to speak it, to cry it out, to look each other in the face and share, be able to speak with such heart-to-heart communication where we don't have to hide from each other anymore, where we can create so much love and understanding and safety between us. And all needs can be met, and purify this stuff that we're holding in our body and our consciousness and our subconscious. take and recreate this whole world. And through this workshop, we're doing an exploration. We're doing a trial. We're gonna just, it's an exploratory, because none of us have solved this entirely yet. And what you're speaking of, Ia, it's so right on. It's what we need to do. It's what we have the opportunity to do. And through love, we can do it. And so I want as many of you to join us on our next workshop and really, go into the chat and sign up for being on the email list. Later, we'll open that back up too, if somebody wants to put their email in the chat. But, without each other and without, our concerted effort, we can't start cleaning up this big mess. And it's not just about racism. It's about the whole insidious, well, I call insidious, issue of feeling disconnected. Disconnected from the earth, disconnected from our very being, disconnected from our sacred dream, disconnected from the who that we actually are as a precious child of Creator, disconnected from each other, always othering and looking at something as an outside enemy creation, what Patricia calls enemy creation. Looking at that from an outside perspective and then forming ideas about it without even being in relationship with it. That's what prejudice is. Having a whole bunch of ideas in your mind, but having no idea of the reality, because there's no relationship with that person. There's no relationship with anything. And until we form real relationships, truthful relationships, where we can bar our guts to each other, and that takes a lot of courage, but we will support everyone to do that, then we can't but help but, really clean this up. And if we keep sticking our head in the sand, not wanting to look at it, it's like a wound that festers under the skin, and then a boil appears and all this pus comes out, and then our body's toxic, and then it just goes all through us. So like I said, you might not agree with everything I say. And at the same time, you might agree with some. And we want to hear you. And we will be doing that in a few minutes, but we have a few more speakers that will come up. Would either Martin or Michael like to chime in right now and share something? Please. Michael, great. Can you introduce yourself? And why don't we keep Martin and Michael up, and then Martin can say something if he wants to. But Michael, can you unmute yourself?
Roger that.
He's going to share some of his experiences.
Hi, I'm Michael Oden here. To give a little backstory here, I'm here in Los Angeles. I was a probation officer for 21 years in LA County, and 99 or 90% of my clients were brown and black. And my goal was to inspire them to see themselves differently and also to do better for themselves, because they did not get the encouragement growing up due to single parent home, which I authored a book about to give them insight about why they made the decisions they did. And I am very honored and proud to be here to share this, because this is really something I really want to participate in, because my story is different. As you can tell, I'm light, and this is my story. And I come from 10 siblings, and we all come from different shades. I have a twin brother who is brown. I have a younger brother who is chocolate. Okay, so we moved from LA to Minnesota in 1967. In 1968, my father buys a house for $1 to a little town called Woodbury, and we are the only first ever, I love this one, criminal Columbus type, not criminal, but Columbus type, where we're the first. And when you're the first people of color in a community, there are some things that I didn't find out till later, okay? For instance, when we moved out there, one school district paid off another school district not to have us attend. Now we're in the ages of between 5 and 6, 7, 4, 3, that sort of thing. We had, since we lived in the country and there were us eight kids, my mother decided to take on foster kids, brown kids from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. So now we have the brown kids coming out every other year. So now we have 16 Black kids in a home on this little island in Minnesota. From that, what you get is now here comes the racial element, going to school. In first grade, people think I have never been called the N-word out here in LA. I said, you haven't lived in Minnesota and you aren't the only one with a little fuzzy hair, and and the first time he grabbed me in recess, I scrunched his mouth whoa. My dad said, you're gonna hear some things. You got to be on guard. You got to be prepared because it's coming, because you are the only ones. Thank God there were 4 of us within 4 years apart, a year apart each. So we had this group, and because we were athletic and people were popular in that area, we got a little respect, let's say. So going through school, I've always heard that word. In my mind, I believe I'm darker than the darkest Black person, because I've heard the word so much. I've gotten so many fights, well, it's just, people yelling out the window, people going to chemistry class, doing this, hearing stuff from the stands. It's just like, wow, I'm always on guard. So then you come up as we go along in high school. My brother was class president. They tore off all his pictures, put them on a wall, and wrote all these racial epithets on it. You see stuff in the bathroom, Oden's this, and the older brother this, and nigger that. It was just constant. I'm not gonna say it was a horrible experience, but there were those moments. There were some people who were supported us, I just got back from a high school reunion, and I showed my friends out here about this collection of students. About 87 showed up for the reunion, and they said this: a lot of white folks. You have a lot of white friends out there. I go, welcome to Minnesota, sir. Yes, because a lot of people out here have never seen such an accumulation of a certain race in one area. So when I tell these stories, they're like, well, how did you do it? How did you get through this? And one of the last things I want to tell you is the athletic department got Brother Francis. By the way, it was a Catholic high school. Which is why I don't believe in religion. I have a hard time with religion, because you're going to pray, you're going to come up and talk about me here, and you're going to talk about the race. You're going to call me all these names. I had a hard time with that, really difficult time. So Brother Francis visited my mother maybe 20 years later. He said that there was hate mail constantly coming through the school about getting us out of the school because these Black kids can't be trustworthy. They couldn't be this. So there were about 3 or 4 garbage bags full of letters that went to that school. Okay. And I'm like, I was in shock. I was like, one thing is buying buying off a school system not to have us come. Another one is having hundreds of thousands of hate letters in your presence, because they don't want you there. And it's like, and there's part of us where we got to keep proving ourselves. We are constantly proving ourselves that we're good people. And I'm like, and I decided not to. I'm just going to be me. I'm already a good guy. I don't have to prove anything, but in their mind, you always got to put a show on. My father sat us down and says, listen, this is what you're going to endure every day out there. The minute you do something, the second you do something, and it turns left, it's going to be magnified 20 times. You got to understand that. So that being said, I still have scars. Right now, I am, what do you call it? I get anxious around white males. I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to feel you out. I'm going to make sure to see where your head is and how you see me, because of what I endured back in the day. Okay. And I'm bet, and it's just one of those things. It's not going to go away. I'm on guard with the white male, and look at my complexion, right? It's like, what, right? the other day, my client said to his dad said, are you going to see Mr. Oden? He goes, no, I'm going to see that white psychologist with the beard. I had a beard back a few months ago. Oh, no, what do you mean white therapist? Mr. Oden, you're going to see him? No, I'm going to see that white guy. The white guy? No, he's black. What do you mean he's black? And I was laughing, but I was like, are you kidding? I had to laugh. So when he brought it up at our session, he says what he did, because he was embarrassed. I said, well, why did you think this way? What was going on? He goes, the minute, my dad said psychologist, the minute he said educated, the minute he said some other formal education, I just went white. he just went white, right? And I go, oh, okay, all right. Automatic pilot, subconscious belief system. We talk about belief systems. These things are just automatic, man, and they click. So my goal is to really inspire, people. There's this wonderful group here to get the elements of the experiences that we've gone through and the stories that I've heard, about the boarding school. I'm like, I can relate to those things. And I just really want to be part of this journey to get this racism, because it's really, I'm tired of it. And now that we have wakened up because of the incident. But if it wasn't for George Floyd, this would probably not have happened. And because of him, now we're like, okay, we're fighting and we're awake, and now we're on a journey to make this world, especially this country, a better country. So there are my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That was beautiful. Martin, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I will. I guess I want to talk about me right now, today, because I've gone through so much the past couple of months. I helped a friend open a restaurant in November, and it became a huge success. And it was I'm in Kansas City, Kansas, by the way. Martin Diggs, Kaw River watershed, home of the Kazaa Indians and other tribes as well that came through the area. I see myself gradually crawling out of a situation where I can only say it as being stepped on. I've been stepped on so much, and it was magnified over the last few months in this restaurant, where we had an extremely diverse bunch of people for a Kansas City restaurant, and I've worked in several, and I've never served so much diversity in my life, and there were times where it actually brought tears to my eyes because I was so happy with it. But the downside of it, for me in particular, was putting in a lot of work, working hard, which I always do, and always trying to make sure that the restaurant had everything that it needed and please and help build the business and everything. And after Mother's Day, which ended up being the busiest day, I was done. I was tired. I was exhausted. I can't try any harder than I did to, I don't know, feel like I was a part of something management-wise, ownership-wise, any of it, without constantly being left out and not celebrated. The people that I worked with, only a very few said happy birthday to me. The main owner never said happy birthday to me, and it's somebody that I've known for years. And I guess the short of it is, I think that you can imply and infer where I'm going. I was just tired, and I had to stop. I am reprogramming myself because I can't continue to be in these situations where, when I do stand up for myself and do point things out, where I feel the way that I do, I turn into, 6 foot, 320 pounds, no matter what I do, no matter what I say, no matter how I baby it, no matter how I do anything, I am just angry or just seeing that as making excuses and using race for an excuse. And it is exhausting. Within this restaurant, because we had, in the case, like I said, so many minority clientele, if there was an issue with a guest, people did not hesitate to come to me and yell at me for my people and the way that they were behaving or their misunderstanding of the menu or anything. And I probably shouldn't have worked Mother's Day, but if they didn't have me there Mother's Day, I don't know what would have happened, because I was the only one that was caring about making sure that people got their reservations right and everything. But the night before that, when we were setting up for the buffet upstairs, one of the owners just went on this awful rant about my people and the restaurant and all these things, and I literally left. I felt sick. I felt horrible. I have heart problems and back problems, and it all just mounted. I went home, and I came home for 2 hours, and I just slept and, was hard on myself about why I'm doing this and why I'm doing that for these people and just all of it. And I still had to go back to finish work, and I did. And like I said, the next day, Mother's Day, was my last day because I just couldn't take it anymore. My preference is right now to honestly be at home by myself and reprogram myself and work on my art and do things that I feel like I can do to contribute to all of the things that we're talking about. Right now, being out there just doesn't, I can't take it anymore right now. If I try my best to stand up over myself, but when you historically get shut down as many times as I have been shut down, or misinterpreted as many times as I've been misinterpreted, or just not listened to, period, it gets exhausting. And I know a number of people that feel the exact same way about a number of facets of society. But for me, that's what I really just wanted to put forth in that message of us talking historically about ancestors and how we were raised and things like that. I just wanted to bring up right now in the way that I feel. And I'll pass that back to the center.
Thank you, Martin. That was really powerful. And it kind of brings me into a topic that we're going to be taking note of in the workshops that are following, is how do these systemic prejudices and these systemic or systems that we're having to live under right now, how are they in opposition to what we know at the deepest level is the best way for us to live? Because I think we're all, I'm not going to speak for every single person, but every time I've done any kind of workshop, I've talked about all this, the fact that, one person's sinking down the hole and we're all waving goodbye and we're so chugging along on the hill and we're, oh, this bill and that bill and this bill and that bill. And it keeps us so busy and so exhausted that it's hard to really do and be who we came to be on a very deep level. And the problem is a lot of this was put into place from this kind of land grab, this taking land. I'm going to give an example, taking land from the indigenous people, making a banking system, selling the land back to everybody, getting everybody mortgaged to the hilt to pay more and more and more, selling everything. And originally nothing was for sale, okay? But what it is then those families, I'm not going to say all of them. This is just a generalization. So those families that grabbed or could hire people to grab, then amassed wealth, and they're the ones at the top putting together the biggest businesses generally. And then that's old money. And that old money basically has us mortgaged, and it has us running around, and we're working for what I call the man. We're working for the man. And we don't have a life in the way of our sacred dream. And then everything's seen as commodities, and we're mortgaging everything. We're putting a price on it. We're not seeing relationship. And then the media that is controlled by that is creating enemies. So, oh, that person's taking from you, so you've got to beware of that person, and that person's doing this, and aren't we the poor ones? And so rile against them, and form a Ku Klux Klan and lynch those people because they're going to get your stuff, or they're going to take advantage of you, or they're going to do this. Oh, we've got to control those people. We've got to keep them under lock and key. We got to keep them. Keep them on the plantations. We can't let them go. So actually, slavery never ended until 1942. Did you know that? And I'm going to have a video that you can watch about this. And why? Because what happened was, after slavery technically was legislated out, then another type of slavery came about that was not called slavery, that got people to work for people. That if a white person just said, oh, that person looked at me the wrong way, they could throw the person in jail, and then they could have them work as a prisoner in the prison system for almost no money, and they still got the labor for free. This has been continuing for a long time. And so the more we can educate ourselves. So if you think of, and you need to prove it to yourself by watching this video, but if you think of the possibility and the fact that slavery didn't end till 1942, what does that mean in the subconscious minds of most Americans? That's why these kinds of things are still going on, this Black race hate, this Native hate, polarizing against each other, because some of the people possibly at the top, or wherever you want to say they are putting out some polarizing information and trying to stir the pot so different kinds of things will happen. And so we're going to be looking at all these things and try to really root it out and see what's real, what's not real. And also, how can we kind of clear ourselves from all this? And then what kind of world do we want to create after that, and how to do it? And this means not just praying and oh, well. Our Auntie Molly's son, Reuben George, is a great example of this. The Native Indigenous people are a great example of this. They walk their talk. That means all aspects of the life are walked. And the question is, how do we do this in this kind of world? How can we support this? How can we make a world where we actually can live in a good way? And what is that good way? And we're going to explore that too, and have deep discussions with each other and try to work it out. And even if you have ideas like, oh, I'm perpetrated too as a white person because the witch trials, we were burned, and or that you feel like you've been attacked in some way, we want to work that out too. Everybody's at this table, everybody's important, and everybody's going to have their needs met. How can we do that? How can we love that much? I want to open up that question. And that question is now going to be open because we have Cynthia, Sister Cynthia, that we're going to have a talking circle. Well, not exactly a talking circle. It's going to be a sharing circle for a few people. We're going to limit you to 30 seconds. I'll have Cynthia tell you the rules along that. And it's going to be with Michael also, and George. And Michael and George are nonviolent communication experts, and Cynthia is a counselor. And they're going to help process people. So if you have something that's triggered you, please come forward and they'll help. What we're doing is we're doing this for the whole, so people can see these processes happening, so we can explore some of the things that'll start freeing us from these things. And the other thing you might want to answer, a question, Akumba, do you have a good question for the audience they might want to answer, or Chise?
Not in the moment right now, but
Okay.
they are brewing. They are all brewing.
Okay, so he might
Yes.
come in later and Chise, and we're going to explore this. And this is just a taste of what we're going to do in the next workshops, but we're going to do much more conversing together because you are important. So I hand now to Cynthia. And if you have any reactions to what we've said, anything that you might want to share, how you feel like you've been privileged, or what you heard in their stories that's meaningful to you, or that actually triggers you and kind of upsets you. So how about having a few of you volunteer? We'd like to have some volunteers. So go ahead, Cynthia. Go ahead and read the rules and we'll move from there.
Okay, thank you, Mari. And I'm going to share my screen just for a moment here.
We need to put George in the circle also. George Sagbo.
So I just wanted to go over our guidelines for our sharing circle. So I really encourage everyone to participate, as many people as would like. And if you want to be part of the circle, if you click on reactions on your Zoom menu, and there is a raise hand button, if you could click on that, then we'll know that you want to participate. And when I call on you, if you could introduce yourself with your name only, and please refrain from adding on what agency or company you work for, you know, not engaging any kind of self-promotion. And only one person speaks at a time, no interrupting. And if people could refrain from commenting on other shares in the circle, instead focusing on your own experience and what you're thinking and feeling and sharing from the heart. And while others are speaking, actively listen with love and compassion. You might be tempted to be in your head thinking about, oh, what am I going to say? But please really be present for everyone here. And try to be open to listening to different perspectives and being respectful of others, no judging or put downs of other people. And so that we can get some time for everyone, if it's possible, to keep your initial sharing brief, about 30 seconds, because then we're going to have our counseling team also come in and have some dialogue with you. So we want to make sure we have time for everyone. Okay.
Can we see a hand of someone that would like to come in and start the process?
And again, if you're interested in sharing your thoughts, if there's anything that was triggering or that you felt really impacted by, just click on reactions and then the raise hand button.
Oh, they're great. Thank you, Deborah.
There we go. Actually, let's see, we have Janet and Deborah. Was Deborah first?
Yes.
Janet, I'm not able to spotlight you until you turn your video on. Would you mind please turning that on?
Well, why don't we start with Debbie? And Debbie, I'm going to unmute you.
Yeah, and unmute George and Michael also.
All right. Greetings, everyone. Honored to be here. I'm Debbie Kunudakosa Beneshi Kwe Nishnakaz Makwan Dundane Gekako Getchida Kwe. And thankful to Mary for this opportunity. And I probably talked too much on that. But anyway, so 30 seconds. What hit me first? My family is like a meshed web of many groups of colonizer and oppressed. And so walking through that is kind of a weird thing. And but what really hit me was the sexual violence. And this, every time I'm doing this work, it hits me right up against the wall. And that's where I have to do my own work. Continuing on. Chiniguich, the Kanigana, Matakoyasin. Pass on this.
Thank you, Debbie. Yes, it can be so hard to hear some of these experiences, and I thank you for being here and being present.
To Michael or George, want to comment? Or anybody?
Well, when you have that reaction or response to what you heard of the sexual violence, I know, it could be other subject matters like that I experience as well as white men, and that riles me up. So there's that button in there that you got to be aware of, acknowledge it, accept it, right? That this is what's in me, and use it to empower yourself, because you could fall victim, but if you use it to empower, then it's a good thing. How can I say this? I'll say it anyway. It's a good thing to have if you have this reaction to it, because that makes you want to empower yourself and possibly empower others as well. Is that safe to say? So it's about reframing the event and using it to empower you to empower others. Because as we all know, to get to the light, you got to go through the dark. And once you get to the dark, once you get through that tunnel, you come out the other end, you are probably a more powerful person than you began. So. I'm learning this.
I guess I was alerted to unmute. Yeah, and it's my huge trigger is the white male. Mm-hmm. They dehumanize some much harder than others, but the justification that they have, when anyways, so, and I don't want to take up too much space or anything. I was just trying to get the ball rolling here. And like as I sit there thinking about the different layers, early, my family has daughters of the American Revolution and daughters of the Confederacy, but then part of my family is Lakota and Anishinaabe. And the when I start looking historically, what was happening to the different sides of the family, while different members were in different positions, and it's just like, oh my God, my children are walking with this intense bloodline, and what an honor it is to be alive in these times and be awake to that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because in order to piece all of that together, and you have to deal with your grief from it in various ways. But then to realize, okay, because I had an ancestor come, whisper in my ear one time. She was like, "We've been waiting for you to wake up." And that's generations of waiting to wake up. And I don't mean this in disrespectful ways, but when I speak of my ancestors, I also speak of the enslaved women that nursed my ancestors, so I'm alive today. So they're my aunties. And yeah, we have to know our story to know how we got to where we're at now, to know where we're going. And we need to do this quickly because Mother Earth needs us to work together. And so one good thing is every person that we see, even the ones that we really disagree with, I've been having to remind myself to see the Creator in everyone. How would I speak to the Creator, even if that person's acting awful? So I try to bring them in rather than shun them away, because we don't have time for that now. We have to open the ears and the heart and get the mind and the heart connected.
Thank you. Very wise.
That warms my heart to hear and gives me hope for humanity. Thank you. In the light of such pain, to stay lit, to keep the light shining.
Now we'd like to hear from Janet.
Sego sebo puego Janet Jungjats Waxka Lewage Danu Aksota ni Staa Ganyanke Hada Ohinjoda Ne Okuzasni Dano Ganawake. So I'm saying to you, greetings. My name is Janet. A member of the Ganyankahaga people, also known as the Mohawk Haudenosaunee people that are left over up in the northern part of New York State, southern part of Quebec and Ontario. Yeah, so, I gotta catch my breath. This was an honor to be here. And so much that's been said has really touched my heart. Some things I did not know, so I always want to know and learn, and an honor to just be with such a diversified people that get it. I'll just say really quick, I've had some triggers through this. My mother was a Ganyankehaga woman, born and raised on a reservation, never knew English. She was removed at the age of 7 or 8, along with the aunties and uncles. They were put in boarding schools hundreds of miles away from each other. And by the time I was born, I was hatched in Bronx, New York. All my records, all the institutions they had me in have been dissolved. I was with one brother. There was a gentleman who spoke earlier. My family, I'm probably the lightest one. I say I was the original aim because my younger brother was with me in foster care, and he got more discrimination because he was obviously dark. And so from early grade school, I was the one who had to go there and defend for my brother, because in the foster home, it was like a blind eye. And they didn't tell us. We knew we were different, but they didn't educate us on anything. It was all about assimilation, and it was about using me to make my brother something that he wasn't. And he was definitely Uncle Homeway. He was a high IQ individual who died at the age of 36 from alcoholism and drugs in New York City, because there was no safety nets. There were nothing for Native people to go to or to even be accepted. In the 1980s, he and I walked down a street in Manhattan, and a guy from some country in the Middle East with a suitcase stopped us And he asked my brother what his nationality was. Long story short, this guy was ready to literally kill my brother on spot because my brother told the truth and said he was Native American Indian. And the guy said, there are no Indians. You're a liar. And again, I had to step in. But anyway, the other thing that I'm bothered about is community. I'm marginalized by not just non-native people. I've been marginalized by my own even. And I don't say this to start a war. I don't say this to keep a controversy going. I feel safe here. I've known Yakumbwe, and I'm not trying to call names out, but on social media for a long time, and we've talked. This man is beautiful. He's a pivotal point in my life. And if it weren't for him, I would not feel included right now because I have been so silenced and I've been dragged through the coals, even in the movement. My story's long and I know you only said 30 seconds. And so the only other thing that I'm concerned about is community and Mother Earth. And, you know, I want to say stuff, but I can't. I'm sorry. I was raised in New York and I got the gift of gab, but I can't get everything I want to say. So I'll just leave it at that. And I'm really humbled and thankful to all of you.
Thank you for sharing, Janet, and so wonderful to have you.
Janet, is it safe to say you have some overwhelm right now?
Huh?
Is it safe to say you have some overwhelm? You're overwhelmed with emotion because of the sensitivity of the topic?
Yeah, it's like pieces of everybody's story has touched me, and yeah, I feel nervous, I feel overwhelmed, I feel like maybe I should go hide, you know. Why should I say anything, you know? But I feel that it was mentioned that it doesn't matter what corner of the earth you're coming from. And I think this is what I believe. I've been, you know, told I stand in the middle between the native and non-native world because of my biological makeup. And most people from where I'm from, they don't want that. They say, you know, get out of here because, you know, of that white side in me. So, but I always feel like the Creator put me this way because, you know, and some elders, native elders told me that, like, you can help us, the ones that can't, you know, that are darker, you know, but I'm very confused, you know, and I need to be in a place like this to hear you guys because I think you're a step ahead of me. I feel like I've been too traumatized. And so I'm trying to catch up so that I could be more effective, you know, to make a better change before I die. I mean, I'm in my mid-60s. I may not look it, but we don't know how much time we have left. So, yeah, I want to get past the trauma. I want to get past the grief. I want to get past the, you know, whatever it is.
I have empathy for you because you and I are in the same because of my complexion as well. So I've gotten that. So that makes sense?
Yeah.
So and one day when you're ready and you go through your journey of healing and acceptance of who you are, you'll be, you know, a wonderful asset to what this group is trying to do, or we're doing what this group is going to do. Okay, this group is going to do. So I understand. All right, I know your journey.
Thank you.
thank you for being here and being vulnerable and opening your soul and joining this eclectic group and trying to reach past the pain to get to something bigger. We're all human. We all bleed red. Yeah. Thank you.
And one last thing I want to say, Jen, is, 99.9% is showing up, and you showed up. Okay. So you're here. I don't, you saw me stumbling through mine. But we keep showing up, things will change. Okay. So I commend you for showing up.
And I'd
democracy belongs to those that show up.
Absolutely. I'd like to say something really quickly. You don't have to put me in the middle, but that this circle and what we're in the middle of creating with this workshop series is a place for us to all show up to really air this out and clean this up and work together and support each other and love each other. And so I would love if you would join us in our next exploration, Janet, because we all have stories, and those stories need to be told and need to be shared, and we need to be loved through it. And we also need to, we'll come out of it and we'll work, what's the next level? Now, where are we going to go now? Because we've got the eye on the, what I call the eye on the prize, we're going to get, how can we get past this where we're in harmony with each other and harmony with nature, like grandmother Ia says, and it takes the cleaning out, the looking within, the baring our souls, just like we were talking about. So you're at the right place, and we welcome you, and you're our brother and sister, all of you, and we need each other. Like our original Red Feather said, we have all gifts, and the Creator gave us all gifts, and those gifts need to be brought together in an honorable way, not an out of balance way, but a loving and honorable way. So, Ia, did you want to?
I was feeling a lot of sensitivity around Janet, and what I know when doing wounded work, and I could, doing a lot of ancestral wounded work, when I know that we open a sore and Janet may not feel it, what I would like for Janet to do is to really take her energy that I see right now and hold that energy inside of her. Hold that energy and work with it if she needs to do journal work around it, not to let it lay there. Because what happens when we open a womb, if we don't give people the way to begin to tend to that pulse that came up, we may not see it as pulse, but something got open for her. So I would like for us to leave her in a good way where she can nurture that something and sit with it and not judge it, but to just hold it like you're holding a baby. I have three, what I did, Jenny, I'm telling you because I have 3 ancestral lines. As I began to do my own ancestral work and that healing, that I realized that I could not ignore either one of those ancestral lines. My great-grandfather from my mother's side is a white man. A great-grandfather that is white, and he was married to my great-grandmother. It was a time when people could marry, white and blacks married. There was in this country, in the Western world, up until the 1700s. But when those people, there was a lot of trauma because those people could not own those marriages and show up for those marriages. A lot of trauma, and we just now coming to terms with a lot of that trauma. And what I invite, because we want to say, emphasize Africa is one-sided. I like you, somebody said on it, I believe in the large scheme of things that we all came together and had these experiences, and we're going to be surprised what they came to teach us. Because when we live in the ancestral body, we learn that there's something designed and purpose about this journey. And I don't want to get into that. I just want to hold that, but I do want us to recognize that we open a space for her and leave her in a good place. That's just my feeling. It touched me over here in my belly. Like I said, when it touched my belly, I listen.
And Janet, if you have an elder or someone close to you that you trust, to maybe be with later today, is there anyone you can spend some time with?
I can probably call a friend of mine.
Everybody mute except for Janet.
Most of the people I know are long distance, but I can call my friend. She's a little older than me, and she gets it. So
good. Yeah,
I'll make sure I call her.
Yeah, reach out, stay connected to those good people in your life that you're connected to.
Thank you.
As we're going to start getting ready to close the circle. And as we do, we'll put all of you into prayer and all of you into well wishes and healing, and also our continued development of this circle. And I can't emphasize enough the thank yous that I would like to share with every heart here, each presenter that shared from the heart, and each participant, because you are also a presenter, and you will be a presenter if you join us in any of the future workshops, because you are that important. Literally, it's not about us being a few stars of the show or something. This is about us as a species, as a group of concerned, loving-hearted people coming together to start to work our way through this path, calling to source, calling to spirit for this healing to come, and starting to look for the possibilities, starting to look for the cleaning and the letting go, and talking to each other and sharing so deeply, so we can feel so supported and so loved, so we can once again see each other in our eyes, each other looking into each other's eyes, seeing our hearts, our souls. Because when you know someone, you find yourself. And when you know someone, you can't really have a prejudice against them, because prejudice is projection, and it's an idea in the mind. It's not real. This has all been made up by a mind that is not in harmony with the divine. A mind that sees everything as separate, a mind that doesn't see any relationship. And we don't have to buy into it. And that doesn't mean it's instant that we have recovery. It means that we are setting ourselves into right relationship. Like when I did that prayer to pray for justice. Justice is right relationship. Justice is alignment. Justice is everyone together, all working as a community, all working for the good of all. And that means we might have to change some things on this planet, because we're not in harmony with the earth. We're seeing it as something to use, and that's not a good relationship. Saying, hi tree, let me just use you. I don't care about your feelings, your needs, your wants. I don't see how you're benefiting me and I benefiting you. You're not my friend. Of course, your subconscious or your abilities are going to shut down for the tree to even speak to you or give you any input if you see it as an object that's not animate or one of life's beautiful creations, a brother and sister. So we shut ourselves down when we see life this way. When we come from ideas that are not real. So as we go through these workshops, please, we'd love to have everyone, because your input is going to be paramount. It's not about being told what to think or do. It's about investigating together, uncovering the heart of the matter together. And so as we go out, I would like to start with a prayer, and then I will pass. We are going to be going out in ceremony. Grandfather Fire, Grandmother Earth, we unite you, sacreds in holy union, that you may bring about purification in our midst, purifying everything that we have shared today as we do purification in and out, making everything whole, cleaning what has come to the surface that is no longer in right relationship that we see, that we've identified. Great Spirit, please hear us. Please hear our hearts. Please hear the love at the core of our being. That which we know as the child, the divine child within, the divine child that was brought here for a bigger purpose. Not one designed by society, but the actuality of our primordial being in harmony with the all that is. Here are the hearts and the souls and the deep wishes of each individual here. Here are their triumphs, their agonies, their pains, and their non-expressed needs. Clearing all of this, bringing it into the sacred heart of hearts of each of us, and the healing in society. Putting everyone's prayers, now everyone, please pray into the fire of what we can bring and be, what we can experience, how connected we can be, how we can love each other that deeply, loving nature and source, not as an idea or just a fancy prayer, but really grounding it in reality. Help us to start moving to do that, Creator. Help us to find our very core and move from that place and clean up everything that is not that. And I pass to our beautiful Chisei to thank the ancestors that have been with us.
Alua oruna atiaye, Lord of heaven and earth. Ranorore watio, send the breath of goodness to us. Nchedida arafunere kumunkio besinu. Bring good health to us. Command the forces of heaven to come before us. Alua oruna atiaye, Lord of heaven and earth. Ranorore watin ba nikuro ninu iparuo. Send the breath of the elders that have gone to heaven to prevent confusion and destruction. Obosinu omiyifuin wasa. Command the water to bring improved conditions. Aung bobo ashe ashesheo modupeo. I pass the center.
And Cynthia.
Express deep gratitude to the spirits of the 9 directions for being here with us in our ceremony today. Bid you farewell. May you go in peace, and may you bring that peace with you to our brothers and sisters in every corner of the globe. I pass to the center.
Airiu menu. Iguak navlas. Isashish grenu. Inyala nagyali. In aliaktina. Imira lasrak. Iguhas guiha. Inivnat faraga. Imun shas talun. Inai genat karaga. We go forth today under the power of the heavens, the light of the sun, the radiance of Grandmother Moon, the splendor of fire, the speed of lightning, the swiftness of wind, the depth of the sea, stability of the earth, the firmness of rock. From the heights, we have explored to the depths. May we be encircled in love and safety. Auntie Molly, did you want to say something before we go out?
Thank you, everyone. I love each and every one of you, and I give thanks to our great Creator for bringing us together today and sharing the information that we've gathered through a lifetime. I give you thanks at this time for each and every home represented here. I pray at this time, O great Creator, I give thanks that you open my heart, my mind, and my spirit to know that there's further work to be done. And I earnestly pray with all my heart that we, through our efforts and our work together, that we will keep this portal open and that we will grow it and expand it in the days and the times to come. I say this with all my relations. Takum shnuknuka. Kukshan.
All my relations. And we pass to Ava.
Thanking and blessing all that joined us here in the sacred circle from the 4 directions. We cleanse and purify ourselves in a good way. As we close this circle, washing ourselves fully and completely with these medicines and bathing every corner of our energetic fields and into the beyond of our daily lives. As we reflect in the coming days on all the messages and prayers shared today, may our thoughts, words, and deed reflect the good work of realigning our own relationships with Mother Earth and all forms of life upon her. The sacred circle is now closed. May we go out into the world wrapped in a blanket of love and light and protection as we breathe new life into create all my relations.
All my relations. In. Thank you, everybody. And we want to stay in touch. In the chat, we have links for you to join our mailing list, and also a link if you would like to make a donation to the elders that have spoken today. And we're going to also open up the chat so you can write your email address in there. Is there any way of opening the chat now to allow people to post?
It is open.
Excellent. So if you have a comment and or would like to put your email address in so we can invite you to the next workshop where we can really start the process. This was the beginning of the process, and we're going to continue the process as an exploratory process to heal the planet. And we need you because you have a story to tell. You have experience to offer, and each person needs to be accounted for. Each person needs their needs met. Each person needs to be seen and loved and heard. This is something I'm emphasizing because it is so important. We're taking this very seriously, how important you are to this process. It's not about us presenters, it's about all of us. Together, we can do this. We can open to this heart-to-heart sharing. We can be the change. So please put your email in or click on the link to make a donation and put your email in, whatever you can do. We're so grateful to have you, and we're so grateful that you've joined us today. And from all of us, all our relations, all of our relations, that means you. You are part of this family. Sending our love and gratitude for your time today and your participation in life as we go on and make the changes that we are commissioned to do by on high.
The ink is black, the page is white. Together we learn to read and write. The child is black, the child is white. The whole world looks upon the sight. A beautiful sight.
Wow, I haven't heard that in a long time.
We're gonna even have songs and sing some of them. So all will be, there's so many gifts we all have, and we can all share those gifts. Thank you so much.
Hallelujah.
Take care, everybody.
Bless you all.
Stay blessed.